Far from taking off and soaring, these are tough times indeed for the aviation industry, thanks to the credit crunch and rocketing oil prices.
I think it was the 9th Farnborough Air Show I attended in a working environment, and it was one of the most depressing, actually, in terms of the general atmosphere there.
And yet growing markets in China, India and the Middle East, coupled with an increased demand for new fuel-efficient planes, means orders for aircraft are high, raising the possibility of a global pilot shortage.
You've had an unprecedented number of new aircraft orders placed in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, literally the biggest, I think the longest backlog of aircraft orders in the history of aviation probably exists today.
Talk about a long-haul aircraft, that's up to 20 pilots to operate each aircraft.
1,000 aircraft will be delivered over the next 10 years. To fly them, we must train 19,000 pilots each year, but that current capacity is only 15,000.
Although
the global pilot shortage is something that's been talked about in the industry for many years. It never really quite materialised.
Indeed, plane orders can be cancelled. However, that doesn't hide the fact that right now business is very good for the world's biggest builder of the simulators which are used to train flight crews. Turnover is around $1.4 billion a year, although maybe that's not surprising when you look at how much these things cost.
An average investment for a full flight simulator like the one you see, a level D device, somewhere probably north of $14–15 million.
But that money buys you astonishing realism, as you find when you've taken to the skies over a wintry Geneva in a business jet simulator to run through a few emergency procedures.
Oh, what's happened?
Yep. What do we got now?
I've got a master warning. Fire, rear compartment fire.
That sounds quite serious.
It is. It's a pretty serious job. We've got to get ourselves back in quickly.
This is like, you call this moderate turbulence, yeah?
This is moderate. This
doesn't feel very moderate. Crew training takes up the vast majority of simulators' time, but the public can also have a go through companies like Virtual Aviation, which lease the simulators. Flight experiences now account for about 1/3 of its turnover, and they're becoming ever more popular despite the price.
We charge around about £500, £600 for an hour session exclusively, but we do cheaper options so people can come in on a shared session and just have 20 minutes at the controls. We doubled in turnover in the last 18 months.
The Charlotte Tower, cleared for takeoff, runway 18 left.
But getting back to simulators' core purpose, pilot training. As passengers, should we feel confident in a pilot who'd done virtually all his training in a virtual environment? So you feel entirely confident in his ability?
Yeah, I do. I have and I do.
Well, in fact, that's exactly what you do. In the real world, a lot of training now is zero flight time training.
The best way to prepare for the future is to live it in advance, and that's what simulation really affords a person to be able to do.
You can train a lot of failures and multiple failures and so on and so forth in a simulator, which of course you can never recreate an aircraft, and you'd be crazy if you did or tried. And so it is a really valuable training tool.
Caution, terrain. Caution, terrain.
So this is what you've been doing with a pilot in a scenario like this?
Yes, that's exactly what we've been doing.
So no one ever just panics?
Well, I would say no one ever does, but pilots are human beings and sometimes people do get a bit flustered. I have seen that.
And it's for precisely that reason why some remain adamant that simulators have their limitations.
At the end of the day, no matter how good the fidelity of the system, you can always say stop, reset, have a cup of coffee and a debrief, and then go back and run the scenario again. In a real aircraft, you don't have that luxury.
In actual fact, it's a relief to get in a real aeroplane because there aren't alarms going off everywhere. In fact, it's a lot easier to fly the real aeroplane.
There's no replacement for experience, ultimately.
Despite that, in the next few years, more pilots than ever before will be entering service, having relied heavily on simulators for their training. But if that worries you, at least take comfort from the fact that I won't be one of them.
And back on the throttle, and just slightly back on the throttle.
Oh. That wasn't quite as good as the last one, was it?
Not as good. Never mind.
Yeah. Oh, well.
It wasn't, but I'll tell you what.
I think I got overconfident.
We would have walked away from that.
Really?